You ever have one of those weeks where life just seems to pile it on, like the universe picked your address for target practice? That's how it started for me. One second, I'm kneeling in my backyard, hands deep in the soil, teaching my daughter how to plant tomatoes. And the next, I'm face to face with the most miserable woman in all of Alderwood County, Marjorie Finch, president of the local HOA. You could smell her perfume before you saw her. She had that tight smile that never reached her eyes, and a tone that made every sentence sound like a warning. "Eleanor," she said, tilting her sunglasses down, "your little vegetable patch is out of compliance. It looks agricultural." I remember laughing, thinking she was joking. "It's a garden, Marjorie, not a cornfield." But she didn't laugh. She took pictures of my yard, my porch, even my mailbox, and told me there'd be an official notice. That night I told my husband Paul it wasn't a big deal, just another HOA tantrum. But the next morning, something strange happened. A low rumble like thunder underground, followed by this deep cracking sound from the driveway. I stepped outside and froze. A hole 3 feet wide, maybe more, had opened near the edge of the concrete. By noon, it was twice that size and our car couldn't even get out. When Paul called the county, they said it was a natural sinkhole and not their problem. But what got me was seeing Marjorie's silver SUV drive by, slow and deliberate, her phone up, recording the hole. That wasn't curiosity. That was satisfaction. By the end of the week, we'd gotten 2 violation letters, one for unauthorized agricultural expansion and another for unsightly property damage. It was surreal, like they were punishing me for the ground giving way. And when I called the HOA office, the receptionist said in this flat, rehearsed voice, "Sinkholes aren't covered by HOA policy. You'll need to handle it privately." I swear I could hear Marjorie's voice whispering in the background. That night I couldn't sleep, so I went up to the attic to dig through old papers, deeds, insurance forms, anything that might prove where our property ended and theirs began. That's when I found it. A brittle leather folder labeled H. Miller, 1893, my grandfather's name. Inside was an original deed describing something called the Miller County Grant. The property lines weren't just around our home, they stretched across miles of land, encompassing what was now the entire Alderwood development. I thought it had to be a mistake, until I found a second paper, yellowed and torn, marked with his signature and the county seal. The land had never been officially subdivided. My family never sold it. The next day, I got a text from an unknown number. "Back off about the sinkhole." My hands shook reading it. How would anyone even know I'd been looking? So I went to the county records office. A sweet old clerk named Linda helped me dig through boxes the county lost years ago. She looked at my papers and gasped. "Honey," she whispered, "your grandfather's grant was the original county charter. These parcels were never properly transferred. The HOA sitting on land they don't legally own." I felt dizzy. "Then why hasn't anyone noticed?" I asked. She gave me a sad smile. "Because people like your HOA president make sure no one ever looks too closely." When I got home, things had escalated. The sinkhole had doubled again, swallowing part of my garden. And standing by it, clipboard in hand, was Marjorie with 2 men in hard hats and bright orange vests. "Environmental inspection," she said, smiling like a snake. "We received an anonymous report of contamination." Behind her, I could see them lowering a small pipe into the hole. "What are you doing?" I demanded. "Just routine testing," she said, her eyes darting to the men. "You should really be careful what you accuse people of, Eleanor. Bad things happen to homeowners who get too curious." That night, Paul and I barely slept. We sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by old maps and deeds, piecing together what we'd uncovered. "You realize what this means," he said quietly. "They've been building and selling homes on land that doesn't belong to them." My stomach turned. But why create a sinkhole? He leaned back, his eyes narrowing. What if it's not a sinkhole? We called a lawyer the next morning. Sophia Cruz, a tough woman with streaks of blue in her hair and a no-nonsense voice. She listened, flipped through the papers, then said, "You've got something big here. That hole. It's not nature. They're drilling, probably after the aquifer under your land." I blinked. The what? She pulled up a geological map. There's a water reserve running right beneath your property. Pure, clean water. In a drought-prone county like this, that's gold. Someone's trying to tap it, and your HOA president's working with them. I didn't want to believe it, but that afternoon, I saw it myself. Marjorie in the grocery store parking lot talking to a man in a Waterfirst Industries uniform. When she spotted me, she gave me that same smile and said, "You should really let this go, Eleanor. You think your little deed matters. There are people counting on this project." I hit record on my phone without her noticing. "Project?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. "You mean the sinkhole?" Her eyes flickered. "Call it whatever you want. Just know you're out of your depth." Then she leaned in close. "That water's worth more than your house." That night when my daughter Lily ran into the house crying, I thought maybe she'd scraped her knee. But when she said, "Mom, they killed my garden," my heart stopped. Every one of her little plants had been uprooted, trampled, and soaked in some kind of chemical. Her handmade sign, "Lily's Garden," snapped in half. I don't remember crying, but I remember shaking. That was the moment it stopped being about me. The next morning, Sophia filed an emergency injunction. Meanwhile, my neighbor, old Mr. Grant, shuffled over with a flip phone and said I saw what they did. Took pictures. Figured you'd need proof. The grainy photos showed Marjorie and a Waterfirst contractor standing by my fence, pouring something from a jug into the soil. That was it. I wasn't scared anymore. I was furious. By the time we got to court, the story had blown up. Reporters, neighbors, even the mayor were there. Marjorie sat up front next to Richard Dean, the HOA president, with their fancy lawyers and smug expressions. I could feel my hands shaking. But when I looked at Lily sitting behind me holding her broken garden sign, something inside me steadied. The judge flipped through my grandfather's deed. "Let me get this straight," she said. "This entire development was built on land your family still owns." Richard's lawyer jumped in smooth as butter. "Your Honor, this document is over a century old. My clients have managed this community lawfully for decades." Sophia leaned forward. "On land they never purchased," she said, sliding a printed geological map across the table. "And here's the proof of illegal drilling beneath Mrs. Johnson's home." Gasps filled the room. Richard went red, sweat dripping down his forehead. "This is absurd," he barked. "That water belongs to the county." Then Marjorie burst through the courtroom doors holding a fresh stack of papers. "Not anymore," she declared. "Emergency easement signed yesterday by Commissioner Wallace. Waterfirst now has full access." My stomach dropped. It was over, or so I thought. During recess, I stepped outside for air and spotted Wallace himself pacing the courtyard, talking to a man in a designer suit. I froze when I realized it was the CEO of Waterfirst. "It better work," the man hissed. "We paid you enough to make this go away." Wallace's voice trembled. "She recorded them. We're in trouble if that gets out." I hit record again, heart hammering. Then Marjorie appeared, snapping, "Keep it together, Wallace, or your little gambling habit won't be your biggest secret." That was all I needed. When court resumed, Sophia stood tall and calm. "Your Honor," she said, "we have new evidence recordings of bribery, collusion, and threats involving Commissioner Wallace, the HOA, and Waterfirst Industries." The room erupted. Marjorie's face went pale as paper. The judge called for silence, eyes like knives. "Bailiff," she said, "bring Commissioner Wallace in here. Now." The next 20 minutes felt like years. Wallace was forced to testify under oath. He admitted everything Water First had bribed him to fast-track the easement Richard and Marjorie were on their payroll, and the so-called Sinkhole was part of a covert drilling operation. When it was over, the judge looked right at me. "Mrs. Johnson, it appears you don't just own your home. You own Alderwood County itself." I didn't even know how to breathe for a second. Around me, people whispered, cameras flashed, and for once, Marjorie couldn't speak. It's funny. I used to think growing vegetables was just about food. But that little garden taught me how deep roots really go into land, into family, into truth. We rebuilt Lily's garden last week. This time we put up a new sign. It says, Miller County Garden established 1893. Feels right. So now I've got a question for you. What would you have done if your neighbors tried to steal your land? Would you have fought back or walked away? Drop your thoughts below. Let's see how many of us still believe that doing the right thing, no matter how small it starts, can change everything.